You have some truths that you live by, gates that guide your outlook, your priorities, and decisions. Well, my guest today, Terry Tucker, founder of Motivational Excellence, has 4 truths that he lives by, and I think you're going to find them very interesting. And his life story is going to blow you away.
This is The Real Bottom Line, where we tell entrepreneurial stories about true grit and perseverance from frontline business owners themselves. Now, let's get started.
Hello and welcome to The Real Bottom Line. I am so privileged today to have Terry Tucker as my guest. He is the CEO of Motivational Check LLC and the author of Sustainable Excellence. Welcome, Terry.
Wendy, thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to talking with you today.
I am too. I think that the world needs a little bit more joy in it, and I think that's what you bring. So this is cool.
Well, anytime I think 2 people get together and want to make a difference in the world, I think there's joy that's brought.
That's absolutely. Well, as we were talking in the green room, this podcast is primarily aimed at entrepreneurs and business owners and people who are doing that. Now, you weren't always a business owner. What is the track you took to get to where you are today from a business owner perspective?
Yeah, it kind of looks like somebody let a Super Ball go in a room and it just kind of bounces all over the place if you look at my resume. When I graduated from college, I was actually the first person in my family to graduate from college. So I was all set to sort of, make my mark on the world with my newly obtained business administration degree. And I look back now and realize how little I knew. And you knew
everything, right?
Yeah, everything. I thought I did. Absolutely. Yeah. And knew absolutely nothing. So I'm looking for that first job, and I'm really going to date myself. This was long before the internet was available to help people find employment. So I was in a way kind of lucky because my first job out of college was in the corporate headquarters of Wendy's International, the hamburger chain, in their marketing department. That was the good news. The bad news was I ended up living at home for the next 3.5 years as I helped my mother care for my father and my grandmother, who were both dying of different forms of cancer. So as I said, professionally started out at Wendy's. Then I switched to do kind of a job in a hospital administration capacity. Mm-hmm. And then I made the major pivot in my life and became a police officer. And part of what I did as a police officer, I was an undercover narcotics investigator. I was a SWAT team hostage negotiator. After that, I got out, started my own school security consulting business, coached girls high school basketball, wrote a book in 2020, but for the last 11 years have been dealing with this kind of rare form of cancer. And then in 2019, I made the brilliant business decision to start a motivational speaking business right as COVID hit. So like so many other people, I had to figure out a different way to deliver the message. And Wendy, this is the honest truth. Somebody reached out to me and said, would you like to be a guest on my podcast? And I said, sure. What's a podcast? I had absolutely no idea what a podcast was. Well, it's kind of like we have a conversation and we record it. And I said, okay, sure, I'd love to do that. I was so nervous, so scared. I had Post-it notes all around the camera. And he would ask me a question. I would kind of lean in and read the Post-it. It was horrible. I was terrible. But it's funny because about 8 months ago, I was a guest on a show where the host was a former National Football League player here in the United States. And this guy was like 6'6", like 380 pounds. I mean, he put his forearm on the desk and it like covered the camera. I mean, that's how big this guy was. But we were talking afterwards and he said, Terry, when I started my podcast, I didn't think anybody listened to me. I didn't think anybody would take me seriously. And I'm like, Marcus, my God, you played at the highest level of professional sports. Why do you think that? So I think it just goes to show that all of us, from time to time kind of have that, I don't know if I'm good enough, or I don't know if anybody's going to want to listen to me.
That little bit of fear success or the imposter syndrome. And part of it, I also have, I learned this term from a Texan, Terry, in my undergrad marketing class, which was SRC, self-reference criteria.
Oh.
Right. And so I have that was a long time ago, and I still use that almost daily with myself as a screen. So that's fascinating that sometimes you just got to do things.
Yeah. And I remember Jesse Itzler, who was a former, used to own the Atlanta Hawks in the National Basketball Association. His wife is Sarah Blakely, who started Spanx.
Yeah.
And I remember listening to an interview that he gave, and he said, when Sarah was thinking about starting Spanx, if she would have, he even said, if she would have waited until all the ducks were in a row, until she had everything figured out, he said somebody would have beat her to the punch to do that. He said, sometimes you just got to dive in and sort of figure it out as you're going along. And that's exactly what she did. And he said that's why she's been so successful.
And so that's what you did as well when you started your motivational company, from the sounds of it. So tell me, how did you break through and how did you achieve success during the pandemic when, you're stuck at home being a motivational speaker?
I did podcasts. I mean, that was really the way. And I had plenty of time. I unfortunately have this cancer that I'm treated for every 3 weeks. So I have 2 weeks off. And during those 2 weeks, I would do podcasts. And sometimes I do 3 or 4 podcasts in a day. And my wife and I always kind of have this sort of rub. She's like, you need these 2 weeks to kind of heal and get ready to do it again and get your blood work up. And I'm like, yeah, you need rest. I said, I get plenty of rest when I'm dead, so, it's kind of one of those things where it's like, no, this energizes me. This gives me a purpose. Absolutely. And, I mentioned my dad was dying of cancer when I graduated from college. My dad had end stage breast cancer back in the 1980s. They didn't know how to treat men with breast cancer. And so they told him to go home and die. And he lived another 3.5 years after his diagnosis. And I believe he did, because he had a purpose. He was in real estate and he worked up till 2 weeks before he died. And so I kind of remembered that, sort of tucked it in the back of my mind and said, when we all get to that sort of end of life situation that, we can lay in bed and feel sorry for ourselves and all that, or we can be like, all right, what can I do based on my physical situation, how I feel and things like that. And for me, that's been podcasting. And I've been fortunate enough to be on well over 600 podcasts all over the world and have met some amazing human beings.
I bet. Question I have is, with your dad's journey of cancer, how has that informed your journey in cancer and your journey as a business owner?
Yeah, I think part of it is, we're all going to have difficult times in our lives. And I always, I try, and I'm going to save that story for when we get into the 4 truths. I was going to tell you a story, but I think I'll save it. But, I just remember watching my dad, and I was a young man. I was in my early 20s. My dad died when I was 24 years old. And so, I'm kind of watching this hero, this person that I love, kind of waste away to nothing, but still, he was so sick, but when he went to work, he was energized. He was, excited. It was good to interact. And, I didn't realize that I was sort of picking all this stuff up when I was helping him. But when it was my turn, it was like, no, I need to continue to live. I need to continue to function. I need to continue to grow. And I think that's certainly something I learned from my dad. And it's something I've tried to apply in my business all the time. I just finished reading a book by Jason Pfeiffer, who's the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur magazine.
Yes.
And he talked about in the book how, he started out as a small town newspaper reporter. And then, he kind of got into editing, and he worked for this particular company. He said, and once I got everything out of that company, I found another company where I could learn a different type of editing. And I went to that company. And then I found another company. And he said, and it by not staying in one place, by not sort of, putting down roots and saying, this is it for me, but by challenging myself to move to something I don't know anything about this, I'm going to learn it. He managed to get the job as editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur magazine. So I don't think a lot of people do that. I think a lot of people kind of get in a place and sort of grow roots, and it's like, I'm here and I don't want to leave because leaving is scary. And I think for Jason, it was absolutely something that he would tell you made his career.
I look at that the same way, Terry. So I look at my, when I came out of school in a recession and, the jobs were terrible, but I always felt it was paid education in that I learned a lot about what I wanted to do as an entrepreneur, but also what I didn't want to do as an entrepreneur. There's so many lessons from each role or thing I've done, which I'm sure has happened for you as well.
Yeah, it's funny when you said that. I was remembering this story. I was interviewing for a marketing position, and I was meeting with the senior vice president of the company. And we talked for an hour and a half, for 90 minutes. He never asked me one question about marketing or business or anything. We spent the entire time talking about my childhood. What was it like growing up? What was it like with your family? What was it like playing basketball and going to college and playing basketball? And I ended up talking to him afterwards, and I said to him, your line of questioning was kind of, I think I used the word goofy. I was kind of like, what? I don't get it. And he said, here's why I did that. He said, I got plenty of people around me that will tell me whether you're good at marketing, whether you would be a good fit for the team. But he said, I want to hire people of good character. And he said, I believe that character is developed in the first 20 years of your life. Mm-hmm. Now, you can certainly massage it as you get older and become, an adult and move through life. He said, but I wanted to hear about how you got to where you were. What was it like, with relationship with your family, your brothers, your knee surgeries in high school, playing basketball in college. He said, because I believe character is caught and not taught. It's not like you're going to read a book or take a class and say, oh, hey, I'm a person of great character. No, you look at things and say, like you said, oh, that's good. I want to incorporate that in my life. Or, oh man, I didn't like the way that person handled that. I don't want to have anything to do with that, in my life. So that's the part of, character being caught as opposed to being taught.
Are you looking to boost your business value beyond just increasing profit? Introducing the Business Value Amplifier, a revolutionary 10-week program designed to help you uncover proven methods to enhance your company's worth. Discover how to transition from feeling unsure about maximizing your business value to becoming a savvy operator who deliberately and methodically pulls the levers of value building. With the Business Value Amplifier, you can expect to take control of your business's growth and be intentional about enhancing its value. Whether you're planning to sell or simply want a more vibrant, predictable, and lucrative operation, this program is for you. Don't miss out on this opportunity to amplify your business's value in just 10 weeks. Go to blackstarwealth.com/amplify and apply for the Business Value Amplifier today. That's blackstarwealth.com/amplify. Your business will thank you.
And speaking of truths, so you talk a lot about the 4 truths. Where did they come from?
Really from my life, but I think they kind of crystallized as I developed cancer and as I've moved through this 11-year cancer journey. When I was diagnosed with this rare form of melanoma, I was told it was a death sentence, that, if I got a miracle, I might live 5 years. If I didn't get the miracle, I'd live a couple of years. Now it's 11 years now. And so obviously I got the miracle, but
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. It was what did I learn? I've had a lot of time to sit around, in hospitals and while I'm getting infused and recovering and things like that, and think about things in life. What's important, what's not important. Kind of like you said, what do I want to do? What do I want to stay away from, and things like that. So the 4 truths are really kind of what I learned during this 11-year cancer journey.
Right. Well, let's dig right in. Tell me the first truth, Terry. What's the first truth?
The first truth is control your mind, or your mind is going to control you. And, people used to ask me, is there a truth that's more important than the other ones? And I used to say, no, they're all equally important. But I've come to understand that I think that truth, being able to control your mind, kind of is the truth, that if you can't do that, the rest of them kind of fall apart. That,
yes.
We've got to take control of our pain. And it doesn't have to be physical pain. It can be, emotional pain and things like that. But you need to jump on it right away, because if you don't, your brain is going to rule you as opposed to you ruling your brain. Now, I've had 11 years to deal with this. 11 years of being on a drug that gave me the flu every week for 5 years. I've had my foot amputated in 2018, my leg amputated in 2020. So, when those things happen, you got to jump on it. It's like, okay, it's sort of like this sucks, but you got to embrace the suck. That I don't like these cards that I've been dealt.
Yeah.
I have to deal with this. I'm going to have to play these cards to the very best of my ability. And that's what I've tried to do for the last 11 years.
I feel the mindset piece is so very important. As you know, I'm in financial planning, and I can definitely see those who have a good relationship with money and have done the work on their mindset have a way better outcome than those who are still struggling with it.
Yeah, absolutely. When I went to college, I went to a military college in South Carolina called the Citadel. And when I was there, we had a president of the college who was a Medal of Honor winner. He was a fighter pilot in naval aviator in the Vietnam War, was shot down, spent 8 years as a prisoner of war. And I didn't have a lot of interaction with him. I mean, he was the president of the college. I was just a cadet. But I remember being at a gathering one time where somebody asked him, who were the people that survived that brutality, that torture? And he said, well, let me tell you who didn't survive. He said it wasn't the big, strong, tough guys who thought that they could handle, any kind of abuse or torture. He said they didn't survive. And this kind of surprised me. He said even the optimists didn't survive. These were the guys that thought, well, we'll be let go by, Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter. And Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter would come and go, and they wouldn't be released. And those people would die of a broken heart. He said the people that survived were the people who figured out what they could control, which according to him was basically our breathing and the thoughts in our mind. I mean, everything else was at the discretion of the enemy. When we ate, when we slept, when we got beaten, when we got mail, everything was at their discretion. Figured out what they could control and controlled it. And I think that's an incredibly important thing. I mean, we all try to control things, especially as entrepreneurs, that are totally out of our control. We have absolutely no control over them whatsoever. And you got to realize what you can control and control that. And the rest of the stuff, you sort of either have to pray or hope for you're a lucky person, because really those are out of your bailiwick. There's nothing you can do about a lot of these things.
Absolutely. I think of that in relation to two things in planning, one of which is spending, one of which is, say, the markets. We have zero control over the markets. Right. When the markets crashed in 2008, I didn't sleep for like a couple of weeks. And then finally I had this conversation. Hey, Wendy, you're not sleeping isn't actually helping the markets or making them better at all. So maybe you should just sleep. And it was interesting. It was like a permission slip where I acknowledged that I didn't have that control. And so then I was able to move and then do what I could control, which was help clients. Yeah. And I think that's about the same as spending, because people can control their spending. They may not be able to control the markets, but they can control how much output they have on certain things.
Yeah. And I don't think people realize that. Unfortunately, I have a niece who's $109,000 in debt from college, and is an elementary school teacher. And it's like, you're never going to pay that off, and that's the thing, but she never got good advice. She never, got anybody that said, hey, no, maybe you go to community college for the first 2 years and get your prerequisites out of the way, a whole lot cheaper. And then you go to, to the regular college you were going to go to and get your actual degree and things like that. But if you don't have anybody, as a kid, I didn't know anything about money. I didn't know anything about that. If you don't have anybody that can sort of direct you, man, you're really at the whim of sort of the sharks that are out there.
Oh, yeah. You'll believe different things.
Yeah.
Tell me about number two.
Number two, embrace the pain and the difficulty that we all experience in life and use that pain and difficulty to make you a stronger and more determined individual. Our brains are hardwired to avoid pain and discomfort and to seek pleasure. So to the brain, the status quo, the way things are right now, hey, comfortable and familiar and should just be left alone. It's kind of like what we were talking about a minute ago about people that grow roots, in their job. But the only way you're going to grow, the only way you're going to improve, the only way you're going to get better is if you step outside those comfort zones and do things that make you uncomfortable. When I was coaching in high school basketball, I used to constantly, my team would probably tell you this, I would always remind them, hey, you guys need to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And, people always ask, well, how do you do that? And what I recommend, and I try to do this every day of my life, is do one thing every day that makes you nervous, that scares you, that makes you uncomfortable, that's potentially embarrassing. It doesn't have to be a big thing. But if you do those small things every day, when the big disasters in life hit us, and they hit all of us, we lose somebody who's close to us, we get let go from our job, we find out we have a chronic or a terminal illness, you'll be so much more resilient to handle that pain than the people who don't. Basically, the rule of thumb is if you don't want to do it, do it. If you are uncomfortable doing it, do it. And I always tell, especially young people, if there's something in your heart, something in your soul that you believe you're supposed to do, but it scares you, go ahead and do it. Because at the end of your life, the things you're going to regret are not going to be the things you did. They're going to be the things you didn't do. And by then it's going to be too late to go back and do them.
Yeah, I did an interview just recently where we talked about that, being more afraid of what you didn't do, like of the regrets than of the pain of maybe executing, and how if you can make that bigger, it's going to be easier transition into trying.
Exactly. And I think, and I actually devoted an entire chapter in my book to this, that most people think with their fears and their insecurities instead of using their minds. And I know I've done that. In my life, it's like, oh, I'd like to do this. Oh, wait a minute. Do I have enough knowledge? Do I have enough education? What are people going to say about me if I fail? That's thinking with our fears and our insecurities. That's not thinking like, who cares? Everybody's really, everybody thinks that failure is bad. That's another chapter I put in my book, is the importance of failure and failing often especially when you're young, because the road to success is paved with failure. All these people, you look at all these, whatever, whether it's a banker, whether it's a musician, whether it's an athlete, whatever it is, look, that person is great. Look at what they've done. They failed thousands of times. I guarantee you, if you sit down and talk to them, but nobody sees that. They just see the end result. So don't be afraid to fail.
A couple things that are coming up for me is I think that the more you try, the more you expand your comfort zone so that it's easier and easier to do that type of stuff. And, again, let's use a basketball analogy, or you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. I had a conversation with my publisher on my book, and I said, I listen to every podcast I'm on because I want to see if I can, find a better story, or I could make the stories tighter, or how many times I say or huh or something like that. And he's like, no, Terry, it's not about being good. It's just about not sucking. And I said, well, thanks for the title of my next book, just don't suck. But I said, no, that's not what it's about for me. I want to be a good guest, so the podcast host feels that it was worth the time to spend time talking with me. So I want to get better. And like I said, when I first started out in podcasting, I was scared. I had terrible stories. I said a million times and things like that. And you get better. Like you say, the more you practice, the better you get at it. And a lot of times people aren't willing to put in that kind of time, though.
I think it's, you talked about analyzing opportunities from a fear-based. Sometimes I like to advise folks, hey, what's the worst thing that could happen? And if you can live with that, motor on through.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. But people never think about it. They don't want to think of the negative. They don't want, I don't think anybody, but at least most people don't go into something, with the idea that I'm going to fail. But,
no.
If you do, you should probably just sleep in that morning and, just get a little more rest, because it's not even worth your time. Because I've had people come up to me and say, geez, Terry, your cancer story, I could never do what you did. And depending on the kind of the mood I'm in, sometimes I'll be sarcastic and be like, yeah, you're right, because you've already defeated yourself in your own mind. You haven't even started. You haven't even gotten out of the gate, and you've already decided that you're not going to be successful at that. So never be that way. Always believe that you can do it. Go back to the Spanx example. If Sarah Blakely, would have waited to have everything lined up, we'd be talking about somebody else other than Sarah Blakely.
One of the mantras I learned quite early on was you can know the path or you can know the destination, and you can't know both. Hey, growth-oriented business owners, are you ready to take your business to new heights and connect with like-minded entrepreneurs? I would like to introduce you to the Elite Growth Community, your ticket to a world of learning, sharing, strategizing, and problem solving. Our monthly live events will bring together successful business owners just like you, who are making over 6 figures and have been in the game for at least 2 years. And the best part, your first event is absolutely free. So try it out and see if it's the right fit for you. And after that, for just $17 a month, you'll unlock unlimited access to our exclusive community where you can accelerate your business growth like never before. No commitments, month to month. Don't miss out on this amazing opportunity to join the Elite Growth Community at blackstarwealth.com/elite. Sign up today and watch your business soar to a new heights. That's blackstarwealth.com/ELITE. Hope to see you soon. Number 3, please, Terry.
Number 3 is kind of a legacy type of truth, and it's this. What you leave behind is what you weave in the hearts of other people.
Yeah.
And most of the people listening to us have probably heard about Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers, on his television show, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, educated so many young people, including me, growing up. When Mr. Rogers died in 2003, his family was going through his effects and found his wallet. And inside his wallet was a scrap piece of paper on which Mr. Rogers had written 4 simple words: life is for service. So, you look at a guy who affected the lives of so many people, like I say, including myself, that for him, it was all about serving. It was all about what can I give instead of what can I get. And Wendy, the way I kind of look at this is this. We seem to think that we are born empty. And that when we get out of school and we kind of get into life, we get our jobs, we figure out what we're going to do, that our purpose is to sort of fill ourselves up. I got to get a good job. I got to drive a nice car. I got to have a nice family, have a great education. And we fill ourselves up. And we think by filling ourselves up that we're somehow going to be fulfilled, that we're going to have a good life. And what I've come to understand is it's just the opposite. We're not born empty. We're born full. We're born with everything we need to be successful in our lives already inside of us. We just need to figure out what that is, pull it out, and use it to our benefit. So instead of saying, my purpose is to give or to get stuff, our purpose should be to give of ourselves, for ourselves, for, the betterment of our families, our communities, our businesses, our God, whatever you believe. But instead of I got to get, think about life more in terms of I've got to give.
And another way of maybe even looking at it is what impact do you want to have in the world, right? As a legacy that really ties believing in and being in people's hearts. What impact did you want to have on those people? What change did you want to affect? That is service.
It really is. And when I had my leg amputated and I still have tumors in my lungs that I'm treated for, I went with my wife to the mortuary, to the cemetery, and to the church, and I planned my funeral. And because I give talks and I'm on podcasts where I talk about motivation and the need to keep moving forward, I actually got some brushback from people who commented that somehow planning my funeral was in some way defeatist. And I had to remind these people that the last time I checked, we're all going to die. Don't think anybody's working on a cure for life right now. Every one of us is going to die. But not every one of us is truly going to live. And I heard a Native American Blackfoot proverb years ago that I absolutely love. And it goes like this: when you were born, you cried and the world rejoiced. Live your life in such a way. And I think that's the key. Those are the key words. Live your life in such a way that when you die, the world cries and you rejoice. Now, that's what I want. That's what I'm looking for. I'm not looking to hasten my demise in any way. No. But death is not nearly as scary for me because I believe I live the purposes for which I was put on this earth to do.
Why do you think people are so fearful of death?
Because they don't live. They don't, we kind of get into this sort of hamster wheel thing where we're just going round and round and round. And like you said, we want to have an impact. We want to make a difference. And people wake up one day and, they're in their 50s or 60s and they're like, I've done nothing with my life. And I talk about people who kind of live a casual life. And because of that casual life, their goals, their dreams, their ambitions become a casualty of that unplanned living. And there was a football player here in the United States by the name of Jerry Rice. And he had a great quote. He said, today, Hall of Famer and everything. He said, today I will do what others won't so that tomorrow I can do what others can't.
Yes.
So, think about that. I mean, if you're not willing, it's kind of the Groundhog's Day movie where, it's just the same thing over and over and over and over again. You got to get off the hamster wheel. You got to do things that scare you. You got to do things that make you uncomfortable. And if you do that, I think at the end of your life, you get to the point where, I had an impact.
Oh, that's amazing. Number 4, what's the number 4th truth?
Number 4 is pretty self-explanatory. It's as long as you don't quit, you can never be defeated. And the way that, like I said, I think it's self-explanatory, but the way it basically resonates with me is this. Someday my pain is going to end. It may end through surgery. It may end through the development of some new medication. Quite frankly, it may end when I die. But if I quit, if I give up, if I give in to pain, then pain will always be a part of my life. We're all going to experience pain in our lives. And, like I said, a way to help yourself with that is to do something uncomfortable every single day. But, you get to a point where, I've got a friend who's a Navy SEAL and we talk, he calls me on my off weeks of treatment and we talk about what the SEALs call their 40% rule, which basically says that if you're at the end of your rope, if you're done, if you can't go on, that you're only at 40% of your maximum and you still have another 60% left in reserve to give to yourself. So again, going back to what we were talking about before, those things you don't want to do. I don't want to get off the couch and go to the gym. I'll wait till tomorrow to call that client and maybe make that sale today. Whatever those things that you're putting off, don't put off. Realize that you still have so much more, that 60% left in reserve to give to yourself.
Harry, I love those truths. And how can people does your book cover these truths? Actually,
it doesn't. I'm thinking about another book that, might cover those. The book really just kind of covers 10 principles. I had a young man reach out to me from college. He said, what do you think I need to learn? Not to just be successful in my job and in business, but to be successful in life. And Wendy, I didn't want to give him the, get up early, work hard, help others. I mean, not that those aren't important. Those are incredibly important. But I wanted to see if I could maybe go a little bit deeper with him. And so I spent some time, came up with these 10 principles, sent them to him, and then sort of stepped back and was like, I got a life story that fits underneath this principle, or I know somebody whose life emulates that principle. So while I was healing from my leg amputation, I sat down at the computer every day and I built stories, and they're real stories about real people underneath each of the principles.
That's amazing. And I think that when we look at you as an example of someone who has fought through pain, someone who has a passion and lets that be their driving and motivational force, we can really see in life and in action how that can really make a big difference.
I hope so. It's one thing, I'm old enough now where I don't really pay a lot of attention to what people say. I want to see what people do, and if your walk matches your talk, then I'm much more inclined to pay attention to you. But so many people talk a good game, but then never follow up and don't live their life that way. So, you've got to have those values. It's kind of like the story I told about character. If you're a person of good character, chances are you learn that growing up, and hopefully now you're implementing it in your life, whether it's your business life, your professional life, your personal life, whatever that is. I want to be around people with good character, because people with good character, they lift me up. They make me better people. So, I always say, Wendy, if I didn't know you, but I knew the 5 people you hung around with, I could tell you a lot about your goals, your dreams, your aspirations, your background, just by the people you hang around with. Make sure you hang out with people that are better than you. They'll make you a better person. Amazing.
What is something I didn't ask you that I should have?
I guess maybe... the question is probably something like, what do you find is important in life? And I'll tell you this story. I had a nurse ask me recently what it was like to have my foot amputated and then my leg amputated. And I told her, I mean, I'm 6'8" tall. So learning how to walk again, falling from this height, not a good thing. People get hurt. So, what I told her was cancer can take all my physical faculties, but cancer can't touch my mind. It can't touch my heart, and it can't touch my soul. And we spend a lot of time, and I'm not telling you not to, we spend a lot of time on this house, this vessel of who we are, this body. We work out, we eat right, we get enough rest, we reduce stress, all that kind of stuff. I'm not telling you not to do that. But what I am suggesting is that maybe spend a little more time every day working on who you really are, which is your heart, your mind, and your soul.
And Terry, I think you have just summed it up beautifully as the real bottom line is to do that. Thank you for your time, Terry.
Wendy, thanks for having me on. I enjoyed talking with you.
Thank you for listening to The Real Bottom Line. This show is produced by Black Star Wealth. Executive producer, Wendy Brookhouse. To learn more about the show or to contact us, go to blackstarwealth.com.